I was struck by the fact that with the alphabetical layout of seats, the seat of Afghanistan was there, not often occupied, and I'm aware of the fact that the Taliban have sought on at least 3 occasions, I think, to convince the United Nations to allow them to occupy that seat. And I believe they haven't paid any dues, so the vote has actually gone, even from the incumbent who is there. Is Australia doing anything within the United Nations system to shore up the status quo, which is that we don't recognise the Taliban? Because I'm assuming we still don't engage with the Taliban directly, given that they are considered a terrorist organisation.
I'm going to ask for assistance on the UN question, but of course we recognise states, not regimes, but no, we don't have a, sorry, not governments, but we don't have a direct relationship with the Taliban, that's correct.
Sure. So we obviously don't write to them. Do they have a right to us? Have we received correspondence from the Taliban requesting any action by the Australian government?
Angela, do you know the UN? Do you know the UN?
Senator Angela Robinson, First Assistant Secretary of the Multilateral Policy and Human Rights Division. Just in relation to who represents Afghanistan in the UN, that is a matter for a body called the Credentials Committee in the UN, and it meets twice a year to assess who should be in the seat. And it's been obviously a sticking point in relation to Afghanistan, as it has been on a couple of other countries. But in relation to correspondence, I'll hand over to my colleagues.
Sorry, so on the question of correspondence from Taliban to Australian government, I'm not aware of any direct correspondence.
So, Ms Chan, you look as though you might have something to add there.
Michelle Chan, Deputy Secretary, South and Southeast Asia Group. I was just going to say that the Taliban did announce on X on the 30th of July that it would no longer recognise the diplomatic and consular services of 14 diplomatic missions, including in Australia. That's an issue that we are considering very closely, the practical and legal implications of that, including for the Afghan community here in Australia. It's a very complicated issue.
Sure. So how have other nations responded to that tweet? Have they communicated with their, what would you call it, the legacy Afghan mission that exists like it does here in Australia?
I think there are a number of countries involved, so they're all taking slightly different approaches, and but most of them, like us, are considering this very carefully and the complex possible potential implications of it.
But this is, I want to be really clear, Senator Fawcett, we do not and will not be recognising the Taliban as the legitimate government of Afghanistan. There is a separate issue to which Ms Chan is referring, which the department is working through, as are a number of other like-mindeds.
Sure. So for the sake of the Afghan diaspora in Australia, though, and their ability to travel, to be certain of their legal status here in Australia, I guess, as well as the mission itself, how long is this going to go on? I would have thought that a tweet from the Taliban shouldn't be something that puts a whole bunch of people who live in Australia to be concerned about their status and their ability to travel.
As I said, Senator, it's a very complex issue, so we don't want to make any decisions before we have fully worked through the potential implications, legal and practical. So we have close cooperation with the Afghanistan embassy here, including the ambassador, very good relations with him, and we are working through these issues very carefully.
And we are carefully considering the legal and practical implications of the Taliban statement, including for the Afghan community.
So,
what is the best way to safeguard that community's interest is not yet, legally, is not yet clear.
Sure. So the way may not be clear, and I accept it's a complicated issue, but would it be a step too far to give a declaration of intent that we will find a way to make sure that they can still travel and be certain of their role here in Australia? That is the government's intent, I'm assuming. I'm just...
That's right. It's a, as I
Sorry,
said,
could
Senator,
you speak up?
It's a very complicated issue, and it has, I think, some may have implications which are not not directly apparent or not evident. So we are working through all of those very carefully, including talking to some of our like-minded countries.
Sure, which is the evidence you provided before, and I accept that. My question, though, is it your intent to find a pathway forward to resolve this in the favour of our diaspora and the current arrangements?
Well, I think they're two different points, actually. Yes, of course, it's our intent to engage with the community and try and find a solution for them. The legal position, which is complex, may not, doesn't lend itself to the simple declaration of the second part of your sentence. Do you see what I'm saying? So yes, of course, this is a very difficult situation for the community. For the existing ambassador, we're engaging with him at the departmental level. We'll engage with the community because we want to work through the issues and deal with the concerns that, including the legal issues which are raised.
So, Ms Chan, you mentioned that our international partners, like-minded nations, there's been a range of responses there. For those who, I'm assuming at one end of the spectrum, have just said, we're just going to press on, what legal basis have they determined is in place, and how much of that is applicable to us? Can we draw on the work others have done to expedite this process?
I think we all have different legal frameworks, so we're all looking at the implications and working through these issues. But as I said, Senator, it's very complex, and there are a number of countries facing this similar situation and similar challenges.
Do you have any time frame at this stage that you're working to? Obviously, I'm not going to hold you to a actual outcome because it's a complex issue, but do you have a time frame you hope to get a resolution by?
I don't have a specific time frame, Senator. We just want to work through all of the relevant issues in a proper considered way.
Sure. My only concern there, though, is if there's no time frame, then nor is there a priority per se, and if we want to provide certainty, then giving people a time frame helps them set the priority for their work, which means that due diligence consideration will be done more quickly.
Obviously, we'll work through these issues as expeditiously as we can, Senator, but I can't put a time frame on it.
Minister or Secretary, would you be happy to take on notice a undertaking to the committee as to a... Are we talking a year, 3 months? When are we hoping to have this resolved by?
Oh, I'm happy to take it on notice, Senator, but I'd just say to you, there is goodwill here. This is not a political issue. This is a very difficult...
I'm not making
let me
it
finish,
political.
please. There is a very, this is a very complicated international legal matter, which isn't just can't be just resolved easily by government decision. So we will work through this with the community. Like-mindeds have taken a range of different views about handling. What I will say as a principal position, though, is that we are not going to be recognising the Taliban.
Fair enough. Thank you for that.
That's right.